Morning does not appear, it gathers. First, a thin pale band in the east, then a soft widening like cloth being pulled flatter across the lake. The light chooses patience. It lays itself gently on the canals, and the water accepts it without a ripple of complaint. Somewhere close, a paddle lifts, turns, and slides back in. The sound is a small circle, no splash, only a folding and unfolding, as if a hand is smoothing a sheet. A dog offers one bark and then lies down again, reminded that dawn in this city prefers quiet company. Between whitewashed walls, vapor rises from a clay pot. One small thread of steam that leans thins and disappears before it can call attention to itself. The floating gardens wake like careful readers, returning to a page with a finger still marking the line. On the chinampa, dew strings itself along the edge of a squash leaf. If you touch it, the drop will ride your fingertip as a cool bead, and then it will be ganosho, no farewell. Bees begin their slow work, as if shy to be seen so early. Reeds brush each other and exchange a secret that does not need words. You are not moving yet, but the city is already arranging a path for you. The causeways reach from the horizon like written lines, steady and straight. Stone bridges arch like soft eyebrows over narrow cuts of water. A canoe noses the bank, changes its mind, eases away again. The lake keeps those motions, then forgets them. This is how the day will go. Small actions that do not disturb the surface and yet make a life. From a doorway, a grinding stone begins its patient song, forward and back, forward and back. Corn agrees to become flour. The tone is round and low, like breath inside a hollow gourd. It sets the tempo, not a march, a pulse. If you listen long enough, your own chest settles into inhale with the push, exhale with the return. The first promises of the morning glide past in the air. Warm tortilla later, a sip of atole, perhaps a bean or two with a finger's worth of chili. And if the day is honest cacao, near nightfall, none of it loud, all of it certain. Mist holds to the canals, as if the night forgot to take all its breath with it. You step to the threshold and feel the floor as coolness announce the hour more accurately than any bell. The light is not white yet. It is the color of milk thinned with water. Your shadow is a soft sketch, not a decision. You pause. In Tenochtitlan, pausing is not the same as stopping. It is part of the work of moving. A boy lifts a wicker fish trap. Water spills back to where it belongs, knuckling against the reeds. Today there is no trophy to carry home. He smiles anyway, for there are other foods and many hands. Behind him, the mirror of the canal closes, unbruised. The lake forgets quickly. The lake remembers forever. Both are true here. Smells reach you in a polite order. First, damp earth, calm and clean. Then the faint sweet of ground corn. Then smoke, beginning to think about being smoke. You know the doorways by their scents, long before you see the faces. Someone sings under their breath, a counting song that belongs to seed more than to the singer. The notes are simple. The notes are enough. Above, a bird cuts the air with a diagonal stroke and is gone. You hear it leave, but you do not miss it. The space it gives back to the sky is a kind of gift. A canoe glides under a bridge, and the bridge does not mind. Rules exist, but none of them shout. Yield, pass, share. The verbs are light and practiced. The first vendors do not cry out. They warm their voices quietly like hands held near a hearth. A potter tests the music of a cup by tapping it with a fingernail. The note is clean, a tiny bell. Somewhere, a reed curtain flutters and settles. The day is adjusting its close. You step from your mat to the swept floor and out into the small courtyard. The wall keeps the nights cool for later, the way a friend keeps a chair for you at a crowded table. On the sill, a cup holds a last patch of warmth from yesterday's sun. You lift it, and it is not hot and not cold. It is simply agreeable. The air passes over your wrists and reminds your blood to move. Across the canal, a woman shakes a blanket, and dust becomes light, then disappears. She folds the cloth once, then again. The fold lines are straight, the corners kind. A child follows the motion with a fingertip, practicing the geometry of care. These tiny lessons make a city steady. How to fold, how to wait, how to breathe in the rhythm that keeps tools honest and hands unhurt. The light grows braver. It begins to paint edges, bridge stones, paddle shafts, the curve of a gourd ladle leaning against a pot. You can almost hear color arrive. Green takes its place first in leaves and reeds. Then the faint reds and browns of clay and brick. Then the blue that the water borrows from the sky. Nothing rushes to be seen. Everything accepts being seen. You listen for trouble and find none. You listen for hurry and find none. The nearest thing to urgency is a stomach's soft reminder, and even that is more suggestion than command. Soon, says the griddle, you have not yet heated. Soon, answer the beans you soaked last night. The word is enough to move your feet. A canoe scrapes a little against a landing stone, not a complaint, an introduction. The paddler ties a simple loop, checks the baskets, smooths a palm over a lid, and lifts the smallest one to test its weight. He nods to no one in particular, which in this city means everyone nearby. The nod is returned, each in their own style, none of them loud. You stand a moment longer, letting the air arrange itself around your shoulders. The city asks a quiet question. Are you ready to carry your part of the day? You answer with the kind of yes that does not need words. You turn back toward your doorway. The reed curtain breathes in as you enter, breathes out as it closes. Behind you, the lake brightens by a finger's width. Ahead of you, the hearth waits to become a small sun. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The water remembers. The hands remember. You remember. And the day, pleased with these agreements, begins. The reed curtain lifts as you enter and settles behind you with a quiet sigh. The room answers with its own calm, cool plaster under your fingertips. A floor swept to the edge where dust knows to wait for the broom. Nothing here is in a hurry. The house carries last night's peace the way a cup carries water, held, not hoarded. Your mat remembers the shape of your shoulder. The blanket remembers your knees. A low shelf offers a painted bowl and a gourd cup that lean together like two old friends. A clay jar keeps water at the one temperature that never argues. When you touch the jar's neck, the skin of your wrist chills, then warms again. This is the kind of change the house prefersable, steady. You kneel by the hearth. Ash from yesterday lies like a gray field that still holds seed. With 2 sticks, you make a little tent of kindling, not bigger than your hand. You give the tiniest breath no push, only a suggestion. The smoke finds its path up and out through the open space above the door, as polite as a guest who already knows the way. The flame settles into its job, to become heat without becoming news. Light from the doorway draws a soft rectangle across the floor. You turn your palm in it and watch color return to your knuckles. The room has only a few objects, but each comes with a memory of being used well. A grinding stone whose edge is rounded by years of patient circles. A wooden spoon polished where fingers always meet it. A woven basket with a handle that learned your grip and kept it. None of these things are loud. Together, they hold the day still. You touch the wall. It keeps the night cool, the way a friend keeps a chair for you in a crowded room. Later, when the sun leans hard, the wall will give that cool back, a little at a time. The house is a reservoir of shade, of quiet, of motions that never rush. What you need is here, and almost nothing you do not need. That is the point. Less noise, more room for breath. On a peg by the doorway hangs a small bundle, a borrowed knife wrapped in cloth, ready to return. You move it a finger's width, closer to the exit so you will remember. Promises live comfortably in this room. They do not crowd you, and they do not fade. Across from the peg, a folded cloth waits for sweeping. Dust becomes light for a moment and leaves without complaint. You lay the cloth back down and it fits its place, like a thought you were trying to recall, and finally did. You bring the griddle near the coals, not over them yet. Heat should arrive like a guest with good manners, announced by warmth at your knuckles, then by a thin shimmer in the air. While you wait, you pour a little water into the gourd cup. The first sip is not exciting. It is correct. Your throat softens. Your chest widens. A faint draft tests the reed curtain. The strands lift and fall together, making a soft hush like a page being turned in a large book. Somewhere above the rafters, a lizard investigates sunlight, then decides against it. On the far wall, a hairline crack draws a steady line from near the floor to near the roof. You have traced it before with your eyes. It has not moved in a long time. Stability has a shape. Here it is. The surface is smooth and patient. You press it between your palms. Turn, press again. The circle forms not perfect, just honest. When you lay it on the warm griddle, it exhales once, as if relieved to be what it was always meant to become. You do not rush the puff. You let heat talk to air and air talk to grain until the edges lift. You flip it with your fingers. Your fingertips know when to pull away. The lesson was slow and is now simple. On the low table, you set the painted bowl beans waiting from last night, a little mash already in their memory. The spoon moves through them with the weight of a cloud, and the scent rises, earth made friendly. In a small cup sits a paste the color of rust chili you ground with a stone and a little salt. It is not for boasting, it is for a single touch, a finger's worth, no more. You think of it the way you think of strong sun, respected at a distance, welcomed in small windows. The house notices your rhythm and offers help. A clay lid warms where you will need it. The spoon leans against the bowl where it will not fall. The basket waits for the tortilla to join its folded sister. You do not need to look for things. They step forward when called. Order is not strict here. It is kind. It remembers you, so you do not have to remember everything. You sweep the floor again, not because it is dirty, but because the motion calms your head. The broom's bristles make a soft, stable sound that keeps time with your breathing. You move the dust toward the garden. The trade is fair. Through the doorway you glimpse water between reeds, a thin glare of sky copied onto the canal. The sight is enough. like a friend waving from across a busy street. No conversation needed, only recognition. The griddle asks, "Now." You lift the lid off the beans. Steam lifts, checks the room, disappears. You spread the tiniest streak of chili on the tortilla. It wakes your tongue and then steps back, as a good teacher does. The first bite does what first bites should. It tells the day you are ready to carry it. You eat standing, knees soft, weight easy, eyes resting on the doorway. You do not need a chair to sit still. Near the hearth, a cracked pot holds kindling sorted by thickness. You are not worried. You trust the afternoon to present a place where fallen twigs have gathered themselves for people exactly like you. The city is generous if you arrive at the right pace. Too fast, and you miss the pile. Too slow, and rain remembers it first. You fold the blanket once, then again, the edges meet, and the fold holds. You turn the mat to give your other shoulder the small hollow tonight. The table does not keep score. From next door, a neighbor's broom answers yours. 2 strokes, 3, pause. The pause is as important as the strokes. A voice hums a line of a counting song and lets it end in the middle, as if the numbers have learned to finish themselves. A child laughs once. The laugh stops, replaced by the careful sound of a bowl being set down where it will not tip. Every sound in this house has a job, and the job is to keep the rest of the sounds gentle. You check the peg again. The wrapped knife waits. You touch it, not to test it, but to remember the hand it belongs to. Returning what you borrowed is one of the ways the house stays square. You feel, for a moment, the line from door to peg to threshold to path beyond the route. A promise takes when it becomes action. The thought is neat. It looks good in your head, the way a well-swept floor looks good in light. At the hearth, you pull the coals apart with a stick, leaving enough warmth for later, and not so much that the room becomes heavy. The fire likes being managed. It thanks you by staying where you asked it to stay. You wipe the spoon, rinse the cup, stack the bowls with a thin leaf between them so their rims will not argue. The leaf was a habit you learned from someone older. You kept it because it worked. Before you step out, you stand still and let the house check its balance with you in it. Not empty. The balance holds. Walls keep their cool. The hearth keeps its heat. The reed curtain keeps its breath. You know where everything is, and everything seems to know where you are. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. At the threshold, you pause and smooth the edge of the mat with your foot, so it will welcome you later without catching your toes. You lift the bundle with the borrowed knife. You raise the curtain with your free hand. The air beyond is a shade brighter than the air within. The house does not cling. It releases you like a good host at the door, fed enough, warmed enough, ready enough. Begin with the simplest kindness, heat becoming food. You draw the warmed griddle, a finger with, closer to the coals, and listen for the smallest change in air, the faint shimmer that means the surface is ready to accept dough without complaint. The cloth over the bowl keeps yesterday's nixtamalized corn soft and willing. You lift a walnut-sized piece. It yields, not sticky, not dry obedient, in the pleasant way of material that has been well cared for. Between your palms, the ball learns to be a circle. Press, turn, press, turn. The motion is unhurried. The pressure, even the circle, does not need to be perfect. It needs to be honest. You lay it on the griddle, and it answers with a sigh that belongs to every morning, a breath out then a little swell as steam negotiates with grain. You do not force the puff. You let it happen the way a yawn happens inevitable when the body decides. In a clay pot nearby, beans hold their warmth with the dignity of something that took all night to become tender. When you lift the lid, steam rises as if it remembers a story and wants to tell it. You stir once. The spoon's path is slow, a crescent in dark water. A pinch of salt finds the pot, not much enough to wake what is already there. You taste with the back of the spoon. The beans answer with earth and comfort, the way good soil answers bare feet. On a small stone lies a paste the color of rust and dusk chili ground with a little salt, a little water, perhaps a breath of roasted tomato saved from the last market day. You do not crown the tortilla with it. You do not paint. You touch. The tip of your finger meets the paste and then meets your tongue. Heat opens like a door, not a shout, but a firm hello. It steps forward, then steps back, leaving a warm place for beans to sit in. It is enough. It is always enough. You fold the first tortilla once to keep its steam, and you set it in a basket lined with a clean cloth. The next ball of dough waits for your hands without anxiety. The second circle is slightly larger, thin toward the edges, a little thicker at the center where strength likes to live. Onto the griddle it goes. Exhale, swell, grip. Your fingers have learned the exact moment when heat is a good partner and when it is a little too proud. They pull away at the right heartbeat. This is wisdom you cannot write, only keep in your skin. On the low table, a gourd cup receives water from the jar. You drink a mouthful before a tolitha. Body appreciates plainness. First, the swallow goes down and becomes permission for the morning to continue. When the third tortilla joins the basket, you lift the small pot where ground corn and water and a scrap of sweet have rested since dawn. With a whisk made from a twig and a hand that has never rushed, you spin the mixture until the surface smooths. A tole behaves like a pond catching a breeze, a flicker, a hush, then a calm that glows. You pour a little into the cup. The steam rises and tests your lips. The flavor is simple, an old friend visiting without luggage. If a memory follows of a cool morning when someone older placed this same warmth in your hands and told you the day would be fine, you accept it and let it pass. Memories are guests here. They know when to leave. Now the small ceremony of assembly. A tortilla opens in your palm, soft and round. You spoon beans into its center, not a pile, a line. Your fingertip meets the chili again only. What clings you add, that brightness, that quiet dare. The tortilla folds itself as if it understands your intent. The first bite is both a greeting and a contract. You will carry the day will carry you. The warmth spreads. Your shoulders notice and release half an inch of tension you did not know you kept outside. Someone calls not loudly the breakfast name of tamales, wrapped and warm. You listen and decide to save that coin for later, perhaps for the walk back from the market, when hands will be empty and feet a little patient tired. Restraint here is not punishment. It is a way to stretch small sweetness through many hours. The promise of later is one of the city's favorite spices. You prepare a small plate to carry to a neighbor whose broom answered yours a moment ago. 2 tortillas, a spoon of beans, a dash of chili, a kind of thank you that does not require language. You cover the plate with a cloth and set it by the door so you will not forget. In this city, food returns to you by the same door you send it out. Not always today. Eventually, back at the hearth, you shift the coals a little. giving the griddle a rest while you make a second pot sing. You scatter a few cracked kernels into hot clay and they begin to pop. One after the other, tiny birds leaving tiny nests. You turn the pot so the last few find courage. The smell is cheerful. You do not need them now. You will crush a handful into crumbs later. A surprise for a child who prefers a story to a lecture. The story will be about corn that learned to become more than one thing, depending on the hands that touched it. You rinse the spoon in a little water and pour that water onto the garden's roots just outside the threshold. Nothing leaves this house without learning where to go next. The bowl of beans finds a cloth to keep warm. The basket of tortillas receives a second fold of fabric, as if tucking a child for a nap. Steam makes a soft ghost, then no ghost at all. The taste is grain and heat, and the faint echo of lime that turned hard kernels into something generous. Your mouth knows this chemistry without thinking the word for it. A small gourd of cacao beans sits on a high shelf, not hidden, simply not invited to every conversation. You touch the gourd with a fingertip and leave it there. Tonight, perhaps, if work is steady, if a trade goes kindly, if someone returns your borrowed knife with a joke that lands well, then the beans will be roasted and ground, whisked into bitter velvet. A pinch of flour or spice might join if someone remembers the song that lists which leaves are bold and which are shy. You do not plan the flavor. Planning robs the mouth of its surprise. For now, you make a little extra 2 tortillas, more than you strictly need. One goes into the basket in case the morning stretches, and the present happy to say yes. A good kitchen keeps many timelines in the same small space without making a sound about it. You sit on the floor, knees easy, back upright against the cool wall, and take another bite. The chili's echo is their friendly ember at the center of the tongue end. The beans carry it the way earth carries warmth after the sun steps aside. The wood smoke threading itself thinner, the sweet straw of the mat. This is the vocabulary that never fails you. A sparrow lands on the outside sill and pretends not to look at your hands. You tear the smallest piece from the edge of the tortilla and place it near the threshold. You do not watch what happens next. You trust that gifts find their use without audiences. When you stand, you do it slowly so the blood can keep rhythm with the day. You wrap the neighbor's plate more securely and slide the basket's cloth tighter over its warm cargo. The cup, turned mouth down to dry, leaves a diminishing circle that fades like a drumbeat moving into another room. You tie the small pouch at your belt salt, a twist of dried herb, one painted bead for a child you might see, and you look once more at the gourd of cacao. It remains a patient possibility. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. Circles, pressed and warmed, beans tended, a fingertip of fire, a promise saved for dusk. You lift the plate, you lift the basket, and the house nods at the door as if to say, "Go on." The city is ready to taste what you bring to it, and later, when you return, it will bring something back. Work arrives the way light arrived, not as a command, but as an invitation. You lift the neighbor's plate, step across the threshold, and the reed curtain gives a small breath as you pass. At the next doorway, your knock is the polite kind that can be mistaken for a wind tap. A hand appears, grateful, surprised, only in the pleasant way. The exchange takes 2 words and 3 smiles. You return lighter than you left, as if the plate emptied your pockets of something heavier than food. Inside, the loom, is already waiting, even before you sit with it. It is a backstrap loom, the simple, brilliant kind whose other end ties to a post while the strap circles your hips. The warp stretches like a quiet road, and your body holds the tension that keeps the road true. This is the first lesson of the loom. The cloth behaves when you do. You settle on the mat and lean until the belt rests across your lower back. The wood has been handled so often, it answers your touch with a softness that wood rarely has when new. You separate threads with the heedle rod, humble and clever, and a mouth opens in the warp just enough space for a promise to pass through. The shuttle is that promise. It slides, smooth and small, carrying the weft like a bird with a twig, across, back, back. You tighten with a gentle tap from the batten, not a strike tap, like a fingertip approving a line in a book. Soon your breathing and the loom's breathing share a tempo. On the inhale, you lift. On the exhale, you pass. The cloth grows in measured quiet, and the pattern reveals itself the way a shoreline reveals itself from a canoe. A little more, a little more. Colors are modest today, earth, reed, night water, because modest colors live well in many rooms. Bright threads wait in a basket for a day that wants festivals. Today wants steadiness. You pause after a stretch, not because you are tired, but because pauses are part of continuation. You touch the edge where new cloth meets finished cloth. You rub it between finger and thumb. The fabric answers with a minute rasp that means strong, not rough. A thread end misbehaves, so you speak to it with the needle. It listens, falls into place, and forgets it ever thought to argue. At your side sits a second basket with the dais garden tools, a digging stick smoothed by palms, a coil of reed rope, a shallow scoop. The chinampa would like your company before the sun thinks itself important. You tie off the loom, lay the shuttle in its cradle, and let the strap slide free from your hips. The sudden lightness at your waist feels like a reward you had not been expecting. You cover the new length of cloth with a clean cloth of its own kindness to future hands. Outside, the path to the garden is short, and the garden itself is long. Beds stitched together by water and roots into a floating quilt. You step onto the first bed, and it takes your weight the way a friend takes a secret without changing shape. Water presses soft syllables against the banks. Dragonflies right there, silent signatures in the air. You move between rows where green is busy being green. The soil here is not dirt, it is memory. You push the digging stick in at the angle it prefers, and the ground yields without sulk. You bring up lake-rich mud from a shallow channel, heavy with what plants dream about. It lands with a softened plop, darker than the bed, eager to be spread. You lay it along the roots like a blanket and seal the edges with the flat of your hand. The plants notice in the way plants notice, by relaxing into their work. Weeds have opinions just long enough to remove them. Your fingers slide under, twist, and the whole plant lifts with an elegant little surrender. You shake soil back where it belongs and add the weeds to a pile that will become tomorrow's richness. The cycle is audible if you listen for it. Lift, shake, lay, lift, shake, lay. The chinampa hums along. When the sun taps your shoulder there, that warm rectangle you know to water. You scoop from the canal with the gourd dipper, tip it just so, and make rain that falls only where it is wanted. The surface of each bed darkens, glows, and then loses its shine when the drink is done. You never hurry this. Water that is hurried grows shy and runs away. Water that is courted lingers in the roots and tells the leaves about patience. A neighbor pulls by, his canoe stacked with bundles of herbs, tied like small, neat bodies at rest. You exchange a nod and a line or two. The lake is calm. The gate at the market is open. The woman with the good clay cups is there today. You think of the cup you tapped at dawn, the small bell of its note, and imagine another like it, a twin for your shelf. Not now. The thought of it is enough for the moment. Many desires are sweeter as thoughts that drift beside you, like canoes you choose not to board. You carry a basket's worth of edible greens, another of flowers, a third of herbs the healer asked for. You arrange them so they will ride well heavy on the bottom, proud on top. Each bundle is tied with a loop that can be loosened with one hand. Your knots are small and clever and live their short lives without drama. A fourth basket waits empty, a space for whatever trade returns to you. A handful of salt, a length of thread in a color you do not own, a rumor that tastes like hope. Back at the landing, the canoe greets you with its patient wooden breath. You test the rope, polite habit, and step in as if greeting an old teacher. Weight low, knees easy, nothing sudden. The paddle is a lever and a lullaby. In turn, draw. Water accepts the blade and gives ground slowly, like a stubborn door that opens because you asked nicely. The canoe moves with so little sound that sound begins to notice itself. Wing click, reed hush, a distant cough returning to someone's throat. In the narrow places, you yield to others because bridges and canals believe in grace more than right-of-way. Yields here are not losses, they are trade. You give a moment and receive a quieter heart. A woman moving the other direction lifts her paddle in thanks. Children on a plank walkway count boats in a whisper, so as not to wake a nap that may or may not exist. Midway, you pause, not to rest, though rest arrives, but to let the basket breathe cool air. Leaves keep their courage longer that way. You trail your fingers in the water to test the day's temperature. It answers cool at the top, warmer below. The lake holds two truths at once and does not argue with either. You pass under a bridge. The shadow covers you and the canoe as if signing its name. The posts carry old cuts and new repairs. Someone has tended them with tar and patience. You admire work you did not have to do. Admiration is food. The market landing appears in the distance, its posts crowded with ropes tied in 10 different styles that all claim to be the best knot. You choose an empty rung and loop your own simple knot, the one that undoes with a tug that feels like the answer to a good riddle. You lift the first basket and the market receives you the way the lake does, by making room without fanfare. But before the color and the voices, there is one more job. You deliver the healer's herbs to the small courtyard behind her door. She meets you with hands that smell of plant and ash, looks at your face as if reading a familiar map, and says the word that means both exactly and thank you. She drops a single dried blossom into your palm fragrance, like clear water, and tells you it will turn plain atole bold if you remember to crush it between your fingers first. You tuck it away, the future nestled in the present. Back at the landing, you sit on the edge of your canoe for a breath and look at your hands. A thin crescent of soil lives under one nail. A line of chili spice still glows on one fingertip. A dampness from the lake cools the web between thumb and forefinger. These are not dirt and stain. They are signatures signed by useful things. You flex your fingers once, and they answer with readiness, not protest. If you wished, you could return home now and call the day respectable. But the city has another rhythm that begins exactly here, where work meets other people's work and becomes more than itself. The loom has given you cloth. The garden has given you greens. The canoe has delivered you without complaint. Now the street will give you voices and the kinds of decisions that are light enough to enjoy, which stall first, which rumor to believe, which kindness to carry forward. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The shuttle will pass again. The soil will accept another blanket of lake-rich mud. The paddle will write the same letters on the water, and the lake will read them and forget. Read them and forget. You stand, gather your baskets, and step toward the market, where gossip is a currency and patience is change that never runs out. The market does not begin with noise. It begins with room. The landing makes space for your canoe, and the planks of the walkway find your feet without wobble. Ropes, each tied in a different, proud style, keep boats resting shoulder to shoulder. You add your own simple loop, the kind that undoes with a tug and never with a struggle. The knot remembers you. You remember the knot. Voices warm up the way hands warm near a hearthlow, steady, unhurried. A seller recites a list that sounds like a poem. Greens, squash, flowers, herbs, a good price for good hands. Another tests a clay cup with a fingernail tinga note, like a small bell that means the firing was kind and the clay agreed. Somewhere a basket settles, straw against wood, and the sound is a soft brushstroke. Color gathers into islands. Tomatoes make small suns in shallow bowls. Peppers sit in green boats, their skins shining as if they remember rain. Squash blossoms drowse with their mouths slightly open, as if mid-yon strings of dried kernels hang like calm thunder, dangerous in no way at all, only impressive. You pass a stall of woven belts, where patterns move without moving, the way water patterns do when the light leans. Your hands know what to do. They check the baskets, pat each bundle once, then lift. You carry greens to the corner, where cooks drift in early eyes, making recipes out of what they see. You spread the bundles so the good leaves show themselves first. A woman picks one up, stares not at the leaf, but at you, measuring trust. She nods. Two spoken prices turn into one unspoken agreement. Payment arrives not only in what passes from hand to hand, but also in how it passes, gently, exactly. You keep a small corner of your mind for the potter with the good cups. When you find his stall, you do not point. You listen to the quiet he keeps around the table. Each piece rests apart from the others, as if the cups agreed not to bump elbows. You tap one rim and listen clear, clean, not proud. You choose its sibling, the one whose color sits between wet bark and cool earth. It is not heavy, not light, just present. You trade fairly. Herbs he has not seen today for a cup you have seen many times in your head. The potter wraps it in a strip of soft fiber and ties a fast knot that looks like a leaf's midrib. He says nothing, which in this place is a kind of blessing. Gossip moves here like a breeze that remembers names. It touches your ear and travels on. The gate on the south causeway is mended, no more delays. The singer with the narrow drum will play tomorrow nightstand. By the third post, you'll hear the skin sing. There was a ring around the moon last evening. Look once. Look down, then finish the work in your hands. You store each rumor in a different pocket of attention. None require a decision now. That is what makes them pleasant. Near the feather seller, color stops pretending to be shy. Plumes lie in careful ranks: jade green, sunrise yellow, shadows of water blue. The seller moves her hand above them, and the feathers ripple, making their own mild wind. You do not buy, you borrow joy with your eyes and pay it back with a smile. Two children watch you not buy and learn something that has no word. Desire can be friendly when it is allowed to stay a thought. At the spice stall, a mortar works raisins into a dark paste. The pestle's rhythm is a cousin to the grinding stone at dawn. The seller lifts the lid of a jar you cannot see into and lets only scent escape: smoke, fruit, a certain courage. He closes it again, and the courage becomes a memory instead of a purchase. You thank him for the reminder that evening can be a flavor. You feel the wrapped bundle at your belt, the knife you promised to return. You look for the woman who lent it. She is measuring cord by elbow lengths, counting softly, the cord pooling at her feet like a tame river. You wait until her count ends. You set the cloth-wrapped knife on the table, as if setting down a sleeping bird. She smiles without surprise. This is exactly the day she expected to receive it, she asks, as a joke that works every time, whether the knife grew sharper in your house. You answer with the joke's answer, which is that all borrowed things grow sharper when returned on time. She puts a twist of salt on the table and pushes it toward you. Not payment, agreement. 2 stalls away, a basket of cacao beans sits at shoulder height, plain and patient. The seller does not call to you. She turns a small whisk between her fingers, not stirring anything yet, only remembering the motion. You let the sight become a promise for later rather than a theft from now. Dusk will have its own kind of room. You buy thread the color of reeds, where water turns shallow, a spool no bigger than a plum. The weaver gives you 1 extra arm's length for luck that stays inside the cloth. You tuck it into your basket beside the new cup. The idea of twin cups on your shelf, later one for water, one for warmth, feels like furniture for the heart. Small negotiations happen without sharp edges. A man wants 2 handfuls of your greens, but owns only 1 handful of coin. He offers a story about his mother's recipe as the rest. The story is good, measured, detailed, told with hands as much as mouth. You accept. Stories hold their value here. He leaves with the greens, and you keep the recipe's steps in your head like stepping stones across a shallow place. The market has rules, and they wear soft shoes. Weigh with this stone, not that one. Keep aisles shaped like kindness. Let voices rise only as high as they need to carry across a table. When a dispute peaks around a basket, the nearest 3 people cloak it in calm until it forgets why it came. A hand touches a forearm. A price adjusts the width of a finger. 2 nods finish the work. You prefer this choreography to any drama you have ever seen. You take a breath in the shade of a post. The shade is kept there as if by appointment. Children with counting songs slip by their feet, finding the coolness painted onto wood. A dog sleeps under a low bench, breathing with a slow authority that sets the pace for anyone who happens to glance down. You copy it without meaning to. Inhale a little deeper, exhale a little longer. The body learns by looking. A seller of gourds carves a spout with a knife that thinks it is a whisper. The curls of pale rind fall onto a cloth laid out to receive them. He lifts the gourd to the light, testing for thin places the way you test a decision. He nods to himself when he finds none. The gourd will carry water. The water will carry cool. Cool will carry the mind through the hour of the day, when the sun sometimes forgets its manners. Across the lane, two women argue cheerfully about whether a certain herb should be torn or cut. Both are correct. They end by buying from the same bundle and walking away in different directions, with the same recipe and different plans to bend it. This, too, is a market. One plant, several fates, all honest. You trade a small handful of your flowers for a pinch of ground lime. The exchange is light, like changing hands in a dance. The seller reminds you, as if you could forget, that corn loves lime the way stories love listeners. You think of your griddle, your bowl, the cloth that kept last night's dough soft. You think of the children at the feather stall, learning how to want gently. You think of the knife back in its owner's hand. Everything is in motion, and yet nothing is being chased. When the baskets are half empty, in the right way sold down, not spilled, you arrange what remains so it still looks like plenty. Then you step away for a slow curl of a walk, not to shop, but to let the market look back at you. It sees a person who came early, bargained kindly, returned what was borrowed, left some wanting for later. The market approves. Approval here is not applause. It is a lower heart rate. You return to your canoe by a route that takes you past the potter again. He pretends not to notice you, checking the wrap on the cup he gave you. The wrap is secure. Of course it is. You nod to him, and he nods to you, and the two nods cancel each other into a calm equal to silence. At the landing, ropes hum a little song you did not hear on arrival. It is the song of things tied well. You place the new goods into the canoe cup tucked, thread safe. The small twist of salt at the very top where it will not dissolve in the thought of water. You check each knot a second time and find them, as expected, still themselves. Before you push off, you sit for a moment with your feet on the plank and your hands open. The market has left exactly the right kind of tired in your shoulders, the kind that makes a bed feel wiser and food taste truer. Ritual begins where the market ends, with hands empty enough to hold meaning. You set the basket just inside the doorway, loosen the cloth, and let the room greet what you've brought. The house thanks you in its language: cool wall, patient floor, the little click of clay against wood that says everything has a place. In the courtyard, the burner waits. It is small and steady, a clay bowl with 3 feet, the sort of object that has learned to outlast moods. You touch the rim knot to test the heat, only to be introduced again and place a pinch of resin, the color of honeyed dusk, into its center. Smoke lifts in a thin white thread that remembers the path without being told. It rises, bends as if to listen, then leans toward the open sky. You do not wave it higher, you give it time. Time is the softest fan. Before the smoke chooses its direction, you choose yours. You sweep. The broom is not a weapon against dust. It is a guide. Straws kiss the floor and gather what the day has loosened. Crumbs of reed, a whisper of soil, the fine ash that left the hearth and changed its mind. You draw all this toward the garden doorway, where outside welcomes what inside is finished with. Dust becomes light, for a moment confetti from a parade that made no noise and then settles into soil that will one day become food, that will one day become patience again. You are not removing mess, you are moving ingredients. You straighten the mat at the threshold so the edge meets the jam with the politeness of a sentence that ends where it should. You smooth the blanket's fold, not because anyone will see it, but because seen or unseen is not the measure. A room can feel your decisions. The room, sensing order, breathes easier. You breathe with it. At the doorway, you lay a flower where feet will not find it off to one side. A surprise saved for the eyes. The bloom does not sparkle. It glows the way a thought glows when it has chosen clarity over cleverness. You turn the cup you dried earlier upright and set it on the sill, not to drink, simply to remind the room that use and beauty can sit in the same chair without arguing. The smoke, meanwhile, remembers the four corners. You lift the burner, one careful hand under, one steady hand beside, and you let the thread find north, east, south, west. No declarations, only a pause in each direction, while the breeze reads the offering and answers with a faint cool on your wrist. You do not ask for anything loud. You ask for what every day asks for here: steady backs, fair exchanges, warmth that does not burn, rules that do not bruise. You return the burner to its place and sit where the light is kindest, half shade, half brightness, a place that suggests balance without announcing it. Words, when they come, are short as footsteps. Thank you for the cloth that grew from thread. Thank you for the thread that will steady another cloth. Thank you for the hands that kept the market soft. Thank you for the lake that forgives lines drawn across it. Gratitude needs no poetry to be whole. A small ledger of promises waits in your head. You open it, the borrowed knife returned, the extra herb bundle delivered to the healer, the cup traded fairly and wrapped with care. One promise remains. You told a neighbor you would show her the knot that undoes with a single tug. You tie a short rope to the doorpost and practice twice, slow enough that your fingers learn the logic, quick enough that your mind does not claim all the credit. You untie it with that single, satisfying pull. You smile because the pull sounds like a soft answer. On a shelf, set a little back from easy reach, sits a bowl with a few kernels of corn. You add 2 more, not as payment for anything, not as insurance, only as witness. Corn watches over people here, and people watch over corn. You tilt the bowl once so the kernels roll and click like tiny hooves across clay. The sound is small and persuasive, it says. We are enough when we are many, and we are many because someone remembered to plant and someone remembered to grind. The house keeps quiet, but it is not silence. It is attendance. In that attendance, you let your breath become a tool. 4 counts in, 4 counts pause, 4 counts out, 4 counts rest, 4 corners again, learned anew by the lungs. The pattern fits like a blanket. Thoughts arrive because you made a place for them to sit. They are not the heavy ones, they are the daily kind. A recipe step you want to try, a spool of reed-colored thread, waiting for the loom. The way the new cup will sound when tested, with a fingernail ting, a small bell that says well fired, well made. A child's voice passes the doorway, like a swallow there and gone. You answer the child's presence with a small blessing that has no words, only a plan. The dried strips of tortilla waiting in the kitchen will become a surprise for a hand that returns a borrowed pot later. Charity in this room does not dress as charity. It wears the clothes of readiness. You stand and lift the burner again for one last circuit, slower now. The smoke is thinner. Gifts like these prefer to be modest. You tip a sip of water onto the ground by the doorframe, the smallest libation, enough to remind the threshold that it carries both worlds without complaint. The water darkens the dust, then disappears, leaving the faintest ring the color of wet bark. They fade because time is steady. At the peg by the exit hangs nothing now. The borrowed knife has gone home. The peg looks pleasantly unnecessary. You leave it that way. Emptiness in the right place is a promise of future honesty. On the opposite wall, a crack still runs from near the floor to near the roof. You touch it once, not to fix it, not to fear it only, to tell it you have seen it and it has not grown. Some relationships are best kept at acknowledgement. You gather the day's small offerings into their proper forms, a word saved for later instead of said too quickly. Now, a blossom placed where it will be noticed by a tired eye, a swept path that invites feet to pause before they enter. A rope coiled neatly, a bowl turned upright. Before you leave, you stand in the doorway and let the light draw a calm rectangle across your toes. You recite the short calendar of today, not by numbers, but by anchors. Dawn's grind, market's bell, smoke's thread, water's ring. If evening keeps its promise, cacao will complete the list with a dark line that tastes of comfort, taught to be brave. If evening does not, the list is already whole. You thank the room for being a place where not getting is not the same as losing. You lower the reed curtain to the height that says, "Welcome," without someone entering, and the strands fall together with that book page. Hush. Behind you, the burner breathes a last pale breath and rests. Ahead, the path to the canal glints in a language you now speak without translating. You step out, carrying no incense and all its effects. Care does not arrive with trumpet or drum. It walks in through the side gate and sits where the light is mild. In this city, the first medicine is noticing. Today you notice a tightness between your shoulders. Small signature and a scratch on a child's knee from telling a story to a stone and forgetting the stone had corners. None of this is an emergency. Emergencies are rare where patience is common. You carry a basket into the healer's courtyard. Not heavy, not light leaves, small roots. A bundle of flowers that traveled with you in the canoe. The courtyard keeps the kind of quiet that listens back. Shade and sun divide the ground into neat halves. A jar of water stands at the line between them, cool where it needs to be, warm where that is better. The healer's hands arrive before her voice. They are clean, with the faint green stain that plants leave on generous fingers. She does not ask what is wrong. She asks how the day has been. You tell her in the pieces that matter. The weight of the mud at the chinampa, the tempo of the loom, the count of steps from market to door. She nods once at each piece, as if measuring your story like cloth. Does it lie flat? Does it pull? She touches your wrist with 3 fingers, not to hunt for secrets, only to hear what the rivers under the skin are saying about the weather inside. Sit where the air moves, she says. Or perhaps she says nothing and simply moves a stool into that place. Either way, you sit. She lifts your arm, lets it fall under its own weight, watches what the shoulder remembers and what it has forgotten to forget. For the scratch on the child's knee, she looks at the edges to see whether the skin is already busy with its own repair. It is. She smiles with her eyes. The best healing is supervision. On a low table lie bowls that have known fire and water many times. A shallow one for mixing, a deep one for steeping, a cup with a lip smooth as a river stone, a small paddle to stir with. She takes 3 leaves and tears them with the care of a reader turning a thin page. The torn edges release a smell that is part earth, part shade, part old promise. She crushes the leaves with a pinch of salt and a few drops of water. The paste comes together slowly, not because it resists, but because all good mixtures prefer conversation to command. For the shoulder, she says, or, again, she does not speak, because the paste says it for her. She warms it in her palm until it tastes of hand heat, then lays it along the place where muscle and bone debate whose turn it is to carry the day. Her touch is not clever, it is certain. 2 fingers find the knot and do not push it, only invite it to consider a different shape. The knot thinks about this, then agrees to be less of a knot. You breathe the way smoke rises from a small burner thin, smooth upward without effort. For the child, she makes a thinner mash from another leaf and a little oil that remembers seeds. With the back of a spoon, she spreads it soft and wide, leaving a clean border of skin around the scratch, the way a good path leaves grass on both sides. She covers the paste with a leaf that will hold its shape when asked and loosens it, with a puff of breath so the child will think of breezes instead of scrapes. Keep stories away from sharp stones, she suggests. But the smile says the lesson is optional and can be learned again tomorrow. Steam helps the chest remember to be a room. She drops a handful of torn leaves into a bowl, pours water that has just decided to stop boiling, and drapes a cloth over the rim. You lean over the bowl like someone reading a map by moonlight. The steam climbs, carries green with it, and draws soft roads inside your head where breath can travel without getting lost. You count slowly 4 in, hold, 4 out, rest the same simple square you used when you lifted the smoke to the corners of your room. Your ribs widen like polite doors. She sets a cup of warm, thin tea in your hands. It is not sweet, not bitter, only kind. The cup's heat finds your palms and makes your fingers remember the morning griddle, the atole, the moment when beans decided to be tender. Memory is medicine too, when it keeps company with warmth. You drink, not because a rule says so, but because the cup is shaped exactly for drinking, and you are exactly the right person to accept the shape. There is a shelf here that faces the wind. On it, strips of bark learn to be soft, roots learn to be polite. Seeds practice being patient. Each bundle wears its name in a knot and a placement, rather than in words. The healer reads this shelf the way a boatman reads water, where it gathers, where it runs thin, where it pretends to be still, but is only resting. She plucks a small twist of dried flower and drops it in your palm. Evening, she says, and that is the whole recipe. Later, crushed between fingers and whisked into warmth, it will make the taste of dusk easier to recognize. Care here does not divide body and house and city. After the remedies, there is arrangement. She wipes the pestle clean with a fold of cloth that knows this job and no other. She spreads the used leaves in a shallow clay tray to dry their stories, not finished yet, only turning into different chapters. She tips the last inch of water from the mixing bowl into the corner of the garden, where the smallest plant pretends not to need anything. The plant accepts the attention with tact. You pay as people pay in places that understand value, with something measured, with something grown, and with something that cannot be counted. The measured thing might be a pinch of salt, or thread the color of shallow water. The grown thing might be greens from your bed, or flowers that make a room stand straighter. The uncounted thing is your promise to teach the one tug, not to the neighbor, before the week turns. All 3 go into her day with equal weight. Before you leave, She places both hands for a moment on your shoulders, one in front, one behind, not to press, to remind you where your front is and where your back is, in case you had forgotten while carrying baskets and stories. You had not forgotten, but the reminder feels like someone smoothing the page of a book you love. She rocks you once, the smallest amount, a boat, testing whether the rope still knows the post. The rope knows. You carry the child's careful knee and your quieter shoulder back through the gate and into the street. The sun has climbed into its serious voice, but the wind still tells a joke along the canals. At home, you set the small remaining paste in the shade and mark the bowl with a leaf, so no one will mistake medicine for food. You fold the cloth that met the steam and lay it near the hearth to dry. You place the dried blossomed, the one that tastes like evening on, a high shelf beside the patient gourd of cacao beans. The two look well together, like sentences in the same paragraph. There is one more kind of remedy, and it is the oldest, hands that know what to do without asking. A neighbor arrives with a back that has been too loyal to baskets all morning. You show her the place on the mat where the wall gives a soft push. You press your palm to the broadest muscle and wait until it recognizes your weight as friendly. Then you lean, slowly, less than a breath, until the fiber stops pretending to be rope and remembers it is cloth. No magic, only time practiced enough to feel like skill. She exhales, as if agreeing to a bargain she should have agreed to earlier. Eat before the sun thinks it owns the road. You remind each other, a proverb with no author. You exchange a strip of dried tortilla for a rumor about a singer with a narrow drum. The rumor tastes like music. The tortilla tastes like corn that learned another way to be useful. Both are easy on the mouth. By the door, you tap the new cup with your fingernail. Ting, the note is clean. It tells you something is right. The firing, the trade, the way you have been carrying the day so far. You fill it with water and drink, half, leaving the rest for later. You touch the crack in the wall once. Touch the cool jar. Touch the basket rituals of inventory, quiet and sure. Travel begins with arranging the body to be kind to time. You straighten the cloth over your basket. Check the knot that loosens with one tug and balance the weight so it sits low and calm. The new clay cup rides, wrapped in its soft strip, snug as a good thought held for later. You lift the door's reed curtain with your forearm, a habit that leaves both hands free, and the curtain breathes in, then out, as if giving you the room's last blessing for the afternoon. The lane to the water greets your soles with familiar textures, two boards that flex but do not complain, a patch of warmed dust that lets go of your footprints at once, a plank that remembers rain and holds a shadow just a shade darker than the rest. You pass a boy practicing the one tug knot on a post, his tongue tucked into the corner of his mouth in the polite concentration of new skill. You do not correct him. You stand long enough for the knot to teach him, and when it does, you nod in the way nods are delivered, here slight, certain, finished. At the landing, boats wait, shoulder to shoulder, their ropes like quiet handwriting. You untie your canoe with that soft answer of a pull, and the boat slides free with a sigh of wood against wood. You step in the way people step into friendship. Weight low, knees easy, nothing sudden. The paddle dips, turns, draws. The canal accepts your letters and smooths them out behind you until the page looks new again. This is traveling as the city understands it. Not sprint, not dawdle glide. Attend, allow. In the narrow places, you lean into the shaded seam along the bank and let another canoe take the sunlit line. You gain nothing by being first and lose nothing by being second. The exchange is not between boats, but between hearts. Yours lowers a notch each time you yield, and the boat rides steadier for it. Under the first bridge, the posts tell their stories in nicks and repairs. You could read them if you stopped, but you do not. You glide, and the bridge places its shade like a hand on your crown, a small blessing that lasts 3 strokes of the paddle and no more. In the brightness beyond, a dog shakes lake water from its fur and releases a fling of pearls into the air. The pearls hang for the length of a blink and fall back into their lives as droplets. If you had missed them, the day would still be whole. Seeing them does not make it better. It makes you slower, and slower is better. At the mouth of the canal, the lake opens like a chest, letting out a breath. The causeway draws a straight pencil line across the water, and people move along it with basketbacks and sure feet. From here, wind has room to speak in longer sentences. It tells you the south gate is busy. You answer by angling your canoe toward the eddy that forms where the stone meets the current. The eddy says, "Wait here a little. Arrive with the others who also learned to read me." You nose the bow into the tucked water, tie once to a ring in the stone, and claim the small, exact luxury of not moving. Waiting is part of traveling, the way a rest is part of music. Around you, the lake practices being many colors at once: steel where the wind presses it, milk where the sun lies flat, bottle green where reeds debate which way to lean. A trader in the next canoe reties his bundles, not because they are loose, but because retied bundles learn something about staying tied. His motion is a lesson your hands absorb without thinking. When the gate's line thins to something reasonable, you push off with a single, agreeable shove. The causeway takes you the rest of the way on foot, because feet are the tool that best understands distance measured in people. You step onto stone that has been stepped on more times than anyone has bothered to count, and it receives you with the quiet satisfaction of a job it likes. The breeze hurries past, your ears carrying hints of cooking from far courtyards, beans considering boldness, corn practicing sweetness, chilies drafting the day's courage. You do not chase the smells. They will be there later, or others will take their place. The city does not go hungry, and neither does the nose. The line at the gate is not a snake. It is a poem with repeating lines, 2 baskets, a wrapped jar, a child counting stones by twos, a man adjusting a strap, a woman untangling a cord that tangled itself only to have something to do. You take your place behind the person whose breath matches yours. In this city, lines are not for proving, lines are for learning. You learn the shape of patience from the way a grandmother tips a little water into a child's palm, just enough to swish, not enough to spill. You learn the temperature of the hour from a shadow that shifts a nail's width along the gatepost. You learn, again, how much can be done by doing nearly nothing. Ahead, the gatekeeper listens more than he looks. He knows what fear sounds like and what mischief sounds like. He hears neither today. He lifts a hand, palm steady, as if smoothing the surface of a pond, and each person's turn becomes the next person's turn, with the softness of cloth passing from one set of fingers to another. When it is your moment, he glances at your basket and then at your face. He sees work arranged the way it should be arranged. Heavy, low, fragile, high, the knot that undoes with mercy. His nod is exactly the size of your effort. You answer with a nod the size of his trust. Two small shapes in the air, equal and done. Beyond the gate, the causeway runs long and level. You keep to the side that the sun is not yet impatient with. On the far shoulder, a pair of fishmongers walk in step, their long net rolled like a scroll between them. When their rhythm slips, they stop, breathe, try again. You pass them with your head turned just enough to offer them your cadence. Here, take this beat for a while, and they take it without taking, falling in more neatly on the next stride. Another lesson. Sometimes help is a tempo. A wind from the open water presses your clothes to your ribs and turns the floating gardens to a quiet Morse code of leaf and ripple. A child somewhere behind you blows across the mouth of a bone whistle. The note is thin and high, and you are glad when it stops and glad that it existed. You remember the way steam carried green into your head earlier, and you breathe now in the same square. In, hold, out, rest. The causeway grows kinder when breath makes corners that a body can turn without bumping. Halfway to your errand, a patch of shade waits beneath a small stone shelter that does nothing but be a shelter. You accept what it offers and share its narrow bench with two strangers who become a small community simply by choosing the same cool. One unties a cloth bundle to reveal pieces of roasted squash that have decided to be sweet today. She breaks one in half and sets the extra on the bench's center line. Not given, not kept, a proposal. No one reaches. After a minute, you do, because a proposal wants an answer. The bite is warm in the exact way warmth should be, convincing, not insistent. You return the thanks by pouring a thumb of water into the lid of your jar and setting it where a sparrow might find it. The sparrow does, and drinks as if practicing gratitude for when it needs to be grander. When you rise, the bench keeps the shape of your rest for a heartbeat, then forgets it. You step back into the sun, and the sun has a little more patience than it did before. On the left, a boy draws lines in dust with a stick, the way boatmen draw lines in water, with paddles only, to see them close again. He teaches himself that erasing is a kind of kindness, and you are pleased for him without needing to say so. Your errand is small and exact. A handful of twigs from the stand of trees that gathers them for people who know where to look. A visit to the man who sets grindstones truer than most. A glance at the sky in a place where sky is the whole conversation. You find all three. The twigs are dry and polite. They bundle themselves when you wrap them. The stone man runs his fingertip around your grinding stone S-rim and finds the shy high place. He shows you how to listen for it with your nail teak where it should be took, and smooths it with a flourish that is not pride but muscle memory. The sky says storm tomorrow near evening, which in this city means bread earlier and laundry sooner, and a cup warmed, because rain loves warm cups. On the walk back, you fall in behind an elder who moves at the exact speed of the day. You borrow his pace the way you borrowed the bench shade, briefly, gratefully, returning it unchanged. He pauses at the bridge to let two children pass with a board between them. He steps aside at the ramp where a woman shoulders a jar whose weight is most of her plan for the hour. He and you arrive at the landing, neither late nor early. The landing approves by making no comment. Your canoe receives you as it did before. The bundles settle with the small, pleased noises of work well placed. You push off, and the eddy that helped you wait helps you leave. On the water, waiting, happens sideways. You lean the paddle against the gunwale and let the boat slide while you retie a strap. Turn your face to the wind. Check the condition of your own quiet. The city moves past you in modest vignette, someone laughing at a joke too private to carry. A basket set down exactly where it won't be kicked. A reed curtain lifting for a guest who has not yet knocked. Near home, a narrow underpass offers one boat space. Another canoe reaches it just as you do. You lift your paddle in a hello. That also means go ahead. The other paddler lifts theirs in a thank you. That also means I will. They pass, and the wake touches your bow like a cat greeting a shin. You do not correct the bob. You let it be part of the motion that brought you both here. From under the bridge comes the cool smell of stone that never sees sun, and you drink it in like water for your lungs. Rules here do not arrive with flags. They arrive the way chairs do, present, useful, easy to forget until you need them. You meet them first at the threshold. The mat keeps its edge straight with the jam. You smooth it with your foot as you pass so the next foot will not catch. A sip of water tips to the doorframe, just enough to darken dust into a ring that says, inside meets outside here, and both belong. If someone follows you in, you turn your body a hand S width, so the house can finish its breath before the guest begins theirs. These are not laws. They are courtesies that have grown strong by being repeated. On the street, passage obeys the language of narrow places. When the lane tightens, the person with the higher bundle is the person who keeps the center. The person with freer hands slips to the edge, shoulders a little turned, offering room. On bridges, step slow on the crown so two directions can trade without argument. If paddles will meet under a low arch, one lifts the blade and glides while the other keeps rowing. Then they switch the next time, because fairness is easier to remember when it moves back and forth like that. At the market, measures have names you can touch. Beans meet the weight of a smooth, river-colored stone, this stone, not the other. Cloth learns its length from a cord with knots that sit where elbows taught them to sit. A scale's armrests level when price and goods are in agreement. When it dips, it does not accuse, it invites correction. Voices carry only as far as a table s-width, unless you are calling for help or calling for a child. Even then, they are careful voices. The aisle belongs to feet, not to elbows. A basket is set down inside the width of your own shadow, not outside it, so no one will stumble on a mistake. Arguments do happen, but they are shaped to fit hands. When two sellers claim the same space, benches become judges without faces. Someone touches a forearm light near the wristband, tells a small story about yesterday's cue. Another person nods, adding a detail that makes both memories agree. The bench keeps the secret of who thought of it first. The stall shifts a hand's width, the day goes on. If coins truly went astray, a low table near the gate holds lost things on a palm mat. The rule is simple. Place what you found. Take what you lost, if your mouth can describe it exactly. No one hurries the mouth. Exactness is a kind of proof. Workshops hum by rules that make tools last. The loom's strap rests, coiled when not in use. The shuttle sleeps with its own wood. The counting cord hangs straight, not looped, so it will not forget its knots. Apprentices keep a song that counts, warps, and wefts soft as breath, easy to carry through a day. The song does not belong to one person. It belongs to the cloth. If an edge frays, the needle hears about it in a whisper and answers with a stitch. When a task is too loud, that is the sign to stop and think, not to push. Houses keep their rules tucked into corners. Borrowed things live on the peg nearest the door until they go home. Gifts live halfway between door and hearth until they become part of the room. A broom leans with its bristles up when it has finished its rounds, so the bristles will not learn to bend where bending is not their job. Water is poured for drinking from the clay jar with the smooth lip. Water for sweeping comes from the second jar, the one that hums lower when tapped. The hum is not magic, it is practice disguised as sound. The city divides itself into neighborhoods that behave like large families. Elders sit where paths cross, not to command, but to be asked. Their answers are short and reversible. Try this first, give way here, count again. If counting fails to settle a matter, the market stone does the counting, and the elders only listen to the sound of coin on claytech. Tick tick until the sound stops at the same number for both sides. Then there is a nod and another nod, and the two nods turn into a thing that weighs as much as a decision. After sunset, rules become softer still. Lamps take turns being fire. Doors become slower to open. Music keeps a light hand on the drum so people who want sleep can reach it. The city does not forbid sound. It teaches it to walk on soft feet. If a conch horn announces something at the far end of the lake, the message travels across water and arrives thinned and beautifully enough to know, not enough to rattle. Night watch moves like wind along walls, not to catch anyone, only to remind the streets that they are being remembered. Canoes keep a code as old as wood floating on water. Knots must be the kind that forgive a tug. Loads ride low and honest, not high and hopeful. Wakes are kept small under bridges. If you take the eddy to wait, you leave the mouth for someone who cannot. If wind stands up without warning, paddles learn to write shorter letters, and boats read them without complaint. When you land, you tie to the ring closest to your own shadow, rather than the one far away that might make someone else step over your rope. The ring remembers you. You remember the ring. Children are introduced to rules with games that are more patient than adults. A string becomes a guide to keep small feet from stepping where seeds just lay down. A pile of smooth stones waits at the lip of a garden bed, and each child adds one before crossing, a count of how many went in, a count of how many came out. When the numbers match, the bed is safe. When they do not, the bed calls for quiet footsteps, and quiet footsteps are funnier than loud ones if you listen with the right ears. If you borrow a song, you return it by singing it near the person who taught it to you, soft enough that only they will hear. If you borrow a proverb, you use it once and then trade it for another. So the city's wisdom does not wear thin at the edges. If you borrow a person's time, you give it back with interest, carrying a basket the last steps, tying a knot that will forgive a tug later, leaving a strip of shade unmoved on a bench for the next body. The interest is small, the wealth is large. When rain begins, new rules bloom. Doorways widen to shelter one stranger each. You do not need to ask. Floors learn to accept a little water near the threshold as a guest. Mops stay where they are. Boats claim spaces closer to the bank without arguments about who arrived first. Lightning makes all arrival times equal. Clay cups rest upside down. The city changes shape in ways it has practiced so often that the change feels like remembering. There are, of course, rules for ending the day. Fire must become coals. Coals must become ash. Ash must become tomorrow. Food must travel, either to a stomach or to a bowl for the dog or to the ground for soil. Tools must stop being tools and start being shapes that rest. Promises must leave the peg and walk to the hand they belong to, or climb onto the peg again with a ribbon on them that says, tomorrow, truly tomorrow. Doors must say welcome with the reed curtain, and later with the same curtain a little lower. Sleep must be invited. Sleep comes more willingly when it sees that everything has been put where the day says it belongs. None of this is hard. All of it is steady. The city's order is not a wall. It is a pattern warp and weft, knot and tug, step and pause. You can feel it in the way your shoulders settle when a line moves without scolding, in the way your hands find the right jar by sound, in the way a bridge shares its shade equally with those who pass under it. Rules live here like furniture, sat upon, leaned against, moved a hand's width when needed, polished by touch. Evening arrives the way careful hands fold a cloth, edge to edge, corner to corner. Nothing creased that shouldn't be. The lake keeps the last of the sun like a coin under its tongue. Lamps wake one by one along paths and doorways, small stars that know their places. Your errands have been carried, and your promises have been kept as far as a day allows. There is still light enough for looking, and looking is a kind of learning. You pass a courtyard where wealth arranges itself into quiet. The gate is open a hand's width, not to invite you in, only to let the rooms breathe. Inside, walls carry painted gardens that never wilt. Birds and flowers hold their poses in the reliable season of pigment. Cloaks hang from polished pegsplumes, the color of fresh leaves, of sunrise, of the deep water that keeps its secrets. Feathers make their own weather. When someone crosses the room, they stir almost imperceptibly, a hush that sounds like silk practicing to be rain. A fan moves the air with a slow, assured rhythm. Its handle is carved deep enough for fingers to find the same grooves every time. Near a low table, cups of stone weight, cool to the eye, heavy enough to prove themselves without words. A servant warms water until it begins to think about boiling, then changes its mind at the last moment. Someone laughs softly at a small joke about timing that belongs to people who ask many things of time. Cacao beans meet heat and answer with a scent that chooses the nose before it chooses the mouth. They crack, release, become something new on the grinding stone dark, patient, persuasive. A whisk knot, much more than a learned stick spins between practiced palms until the surface gathers into a soft brown foam. The sound it makes is a whisper of ribs and breath, of someone calming a child, of rain rehearsing on leaves. Spices wait at the edge of this ceremony like quiet guests who know when they are wanted and when they are not. You do not enter. You do not need to. The sight is enough. A room where softness is carefully stacked, where weight falls on carpets instead of shoulders, where cups are shaped to fit hands that have not carried baskets today. Luxury is not a crime, it is a language. You can read a few words from outside the gate. Ease, polish, hush. You recognize them because your own house speaks them in a different dialect. A flute line drifts from somewhere beyond, just a few notes looking for a place to settle. The notes find the courtyard and rest a while on the rim of a bowl. Then they continue along the street and disappear over water. You allow yourself a single what fear back against a lacquered couch, your fingers around a cup that sweats faintly with warmth, your throat learning the confidence of bitter velvet hand. Then you let the what if evaporate. Familiarity is its own generosity. It asks less and gives more. You turn away at the same pace you arrived. The lake has darkened, but not too black. It holds the day's color in its shallows, the way a good host keeps a light burning for a friend who is late. A canoe slides by carrying a lamp protected by a woven hood. The lamp's reflection rides beside it like a second boat with a fire for a passenger. Reeds bow and rise. The bridge you passed under earlier blesses you again with a low, cool arch. The night watch moves somewhere along the wall, steady as wind. At home, the reed curtain lifts and falls, a gentle yes. The room receives you with the quiet satisfaction of furniture that remembers your shape. You place the wrapped cup on the sill. Your hand checks the peg by the door out of habit. It is empty in the pleasing way that means no debts are hanging. The crack on the wall has not changed. You touch it once, a pact between you and the day. We will keep each other company without worry. It is time to make evening into something you can hold. You choose a small handful of cacao beans from the patient gourd on the high shelf enough for one cup that knows its purpose. The griddle, still fond of warmth from earlier, agrees to help. The beans toast and roll, skins splitting with tiny sighs. Their aroma snakes through the room and settles where breath can find it, even with eyes closed. On the grinding stone, you coax the beans into paste. The motion is slow, circular, the weight of your body carrying the work, so your hands do not have to boast about strength. The paste darkens, shines, smooths. You add the smallest sip of water and the smallest pinch of salt to teach the tongue where to look. Salt is a lantern for flavor when used like a good question rarely, gently. You remember the healer's gifted dried blossom that tastes like evening. You crush it between finger and thumb and invite its fragrance into the cup with the warm water. The blossom answers by dissolving without drama, leaving behind the kind of brightness that does not insist on being noticed. You whisk. The surface gathers into a light foam, and the sound of whisking stitches the room to your breathing. You sit where the wall keeps a memory of the day's coolness and let the cup teach your palms about temperature. The first sip is cautious, the second convinced. Bitter arrives first, then steps aside for a sweetness that is not sugar but courage tamed. Heat travels through your chest the way dawn traveled across the lake, unhurried, inevitable, a spread that promises and keeps the promise. You lower the cup and the foam draws a ring on the rim like a moon that has chosen a smaller sky. The house finishes its closing rituals without being asked. The griddle edges are nudged to modest warmth. The spoon is rinsed and set where dripping makes no mischief. The broom stands bristles, up proud and off duty. The basket that carried tortillas earlier receives tonight's folded blanket like a second cargo. You tilt a thimble of water onto the threshold. Hello, goodbye, so the day leaves and arrives by the same door. Outside, the courtyard's burner might still carry a pale thread of smoke. Inside, the incense is only a memory in the rafters, a good one. Somewhere across the canal, laughter breaks and lands softly, as if listeners caught it in their hands to keep it from waking a child. The city has turned down its volume. Sounds walk in soft shoes. Even your thoughts seem to speak with their hats in their hands. You lie down. The mat offers the hollow you prepared for your other shoulder this morning. The blanket remembers your knees and keeps them from arguing with the night. You slide a hand under the small of your back and feel no complaint there. The healer's paste and the day's pace have made an agreement. Your tongue keeps a polite echo of cacao's bravery. You do not need more. For a moment you let two worlds touch, this room and the one beyond the story. In that other room there may be a switch that answers to a fingertip with instant light, a tap that makes water appear without walking, a pillow that gives way like cloud and returns like tide. You are allowed to love those things without apology. You are allowed to love this room without comparison. Comfort speaks many languages, and they understand each other. The reed curtain rests at the height that means welcome tomorrow. The cup, now empty, keeps its ring as proof that evening visited and behaved. Your breathing becomes the slow whisk you made earlier. In, gather, out, smooth. The lake breathes with you, filling the canals with a tide of dark that is not absence, but presence, wearing a different coat. Somewhere, a conch horn sends a single line of sound across the water. It arrives thinner than it began, which is perfect. The night prefers things that know how to thin. Your last thought is not a thought, but a sentence that has ended so many times in this city, it knows the way home. It will be the same as yesterday, and that is a comfort. The blanket answers by finding your shoulders. The mat answers by becoming the shape of your rest. The house answers by keeping the night and sleep, seeing that everything has been put where the day says it belongs, comes in without knocking, and sits quietly beside you until morning gathers again.